Good afternoon and welcome to the Wednesday workshop. I'm Bob Savin, owner, trainer, and certified golf fitness instructor here at Fitness Together. And today I wanted to come to you live to talk about some tips, some exercises, things that will help improve your golf game and keep you injury-free, hopefully, when you're out on the course this summer. So first and foremost, what I wanted to go over is just the idea of what we look at when we're talking about a successful swing. Obviously, some things that are really important to establish when you're swinging the club is you want to make sure that your position, your proper setup, that your knees are slightly bent, that you're in a little bit of a hinge, that you're able to achieve that position. And actually, before I go too deep into that, what I also want to talk about today, and I know I've mentioned this in prior broadcasts, is that here at Fitness Together, we actually offer a screening, a movement screening that we do for all of our clients, but we also incorporate that for athletes as well, those that are looking to play golf. We want to evaluate certain things. We want to look at the ability to move your shoulders, your hips, your knees, to see how those joints work and to make sure that they're all functioning properly and in the way that we want them to move in order to have a proper swing. So to get back to what I was saying before, obviously position, a proper setup is super important when it comes to swinging the club. The ability to load the hips properly, right, especially through rotation. Right? We want to make sure that those hips are loaded correctly, that we're shifting our weight appropriately when we're swinging the club, and again, that we're able to rotate. Okay? When we make that rotation, we want to be able to disassociate our upper and our lower body. If as you're rotating, everything kind of rotates together, you're going to spray that shot, or you're not going to hit it as far with as much power. Right? So it's important to be able to disassociate upper and lower body as well. And the last thing that I want to talk about is the ability to accelerate and decelerate through the swing as well. As I said, when we screen that, oftentimes what that looks like is if we perform a lunge type pattern, people often have trouble landing that lunge without losing their balance. Right? Well, the same thing happens when you're swinging the club as you're following through. If you cannot accelerate and decelerate properly, you'll tend to overswing as you come through the ball. So today I have 7 exercises for you that we'll go through and show you some different ways that you can work on these things to improve your swing and to improve your game. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop this a little bit so you can see me down on the floor. And our first exercise we call the dead bug. All right? Lying on the ground, we're going to use our club and we're going to wedge it between your toe and your opposite hand. I'm going to bring my other knee up to 90 degrees and the hand up as well. The purpose of this exercise is to establish stiffness in the trunk, in the core. Right? And that often will prevent us from overextending or twisting too much through the swing. So what I'm going to do here is while I'm establishing stiffness between the hand and the foot, I'm going to take the opposite arm and leg and reach out as long as I can to the floor. And breathe in on the way up and exhale on the way out. Again, maintaining that stiffness between the hand and the foot while performing that exercise. The next exercise is what I would call a hip extension. Right, or loading the hip. So from a half kneeling position, we'll use our club again to stabilize the upper body. And if I turn sideways, you might see this better. But from that half kneeling position, if I dump out my hips a little bit and then push forward, again, I don't want to overextend. I don't want to be loose in the upper body. I just want a little bit of movement. It's a slight movement from a hinge, pushing that hip forward. And what I'm trying to establish here is I'm trying to stretch out that hip flexor. Very often when we're in our daily activities throughout the day or we're working throughout the day, we tend to sit, right? And we're seated, therefore loosening that muscle quite a bit. So by extending it out and getting it nice and taut, that's training that muscle to extend, again, as you're swinging the club. So just a few of these on each side is another way to warm up before you get out on the course. Okay. Another one, as I said before, positioning. So I'm going to have to tip this camera back up here. Okay. As a proper setup is so important, and the ability to hinge. And when I say hinge, the ability to kind of push your hips backwards, but not lose posture. I don't want to be hunched over as I'm sticking my hips out. So the ability to maintain posture as I stick my hips out. And a good way to kind of check that a little bit is to use your club right up just below your belt line. And if you push that club and use it as a fulcrum to push into your hips and push your hips backwards, that'll help you maintain that posture that you're looking for. And then you can unload those knees a little bit. And that's a great setup to hit the ball from. If you're finding some difficulty going into that position, another way to do it is to take your club and to put it behind your back and to try your hinge from that position as well. And the advantage to doing it this way is by keeping the club attached to your spine and to your hips, you'll know very readily if you're arching your back. If you see that gap between the club and my back, you'll know right away that you're not keeping your back flat and hinging out properly when performing that exercise. Okay. Moving on from there, right, another exercise that we can take that to is using the club again, pointing it down at the toe. We can transition to a single leg deadlift. So holding the club head, and this is very similar to what we were doing with the dead bug at the beginning, but by pressing the club into the foot and extending that leg backwards, this is a little bit more of an advanced exercise where we need to establish using the foot to grab the ground, but we can come out over the top, trying to maintain that flat back posture and using that club as leverage to lengthen the body and come back around. Now again, that's not actually obviously a move that you're making too often when you're swinging a club, but the muscles involved in doing that single leg deadlift, the glutes, the hamstrings, the stability, the foot placement become very important when you're trying to hold the ground and swing the club. One of the last exercises I want to talk about is that loading during the rotational phase. So as we rotate, as I said before, it's very important not to have the upper body and the hips moving together at the same time. So what we want to do is work on keeping the hips nice and still as the upper body rotates. So the way to think about that is if you plant your feet in the ground and we establish that position with the floor, we're in our loaded position here, slightly bent knees, back is flat, nice tall posture. What I want to do is I want to take that hip, and as I rotate during my swing, I want to think about putting that hip where the back pocket is now. So as I rotate out during the swing, that hip is moving towards that back pocket. Right? And just working on establishing good contact with the ground, rotating, pushing that hip towards the back pocket, and turning the shoulders. One way to progress that exercise would be to put a rubber band around your legs just above the knees. So this way you can work on really training those hips to be a little tighter. A lot of times you'll see people swing and their knees will collapse on them as they're trying to rotate. We want to establish that position and use the band to push those knees out to the side. Really grab the ground with your feet, tighten up the hips, and then we can go from that position there where we're rotating that hip towards the back pocket. Those exercises there will certainly help you establish greater rotation, more balance in your hips, and ultimately lead to less pain, less back pain, a straighter drive with more club head speed and therefore more power. So if you have any questions about those exercises, or you'd like to schedule a time for a screening, an assessment, or a session with me here at Fitness Together. I'll put my information up at the end, but I look forward to hearing from everybody and seeing you back in the studio soon. Thanks.